The signal. The first unusual thing Sarah Chen noticed that morning wasn't the static on her radio equipment, it was the complete absence of it. 20 years of operating the most sophisticated amateur radio setup in Pine Ridge had taught her that space was never truly quiet. There was always something. Solar wind, distant pulsars, the background hum of the universe itself. But today there was nothing but a perfect, crystalline silence. Sarah adjusted her headphones and checked her equipment for the third time. The former NASA communications specialist hadn't spent her retirement fund on military-grade receivers just to miss the morning's atmospheric readings. Her basement setup rivaled some university labs, a fact that made her the subject of good-natured ribbing at the town's weekly farmers market. Getting those alien messages again, Sarah. They'd joke, not knowing how close to the truth they'd soon be. The silence lasted exactly 17 minutes before being replaced by something far more troubling. A pattern. Not the random noise of cosmic radiation or the familiar signals of satellite traffic, but a precise mathematical sequence that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. She was reaching for her phone to call Dr. Marcus at the local observatory when her entire system went dark. Not just powered down. Every digital display, every LED, every circuit within 20 feet died simultaneously. In the sudden darkness, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced since her days in mission control during the Mars landing crisis. Pure, instinctual dread. Across town, retired Marine Colonel James "Thunder" Thompson was experiencing his own moment of wrongness. The security cameras he'd installed around his modest ranch house, a habit from his days running counterintelligence operations, had caught something impossible. Every bird in his yard, from the smallest sparrow to the fat blue jays that usually fought over his feeders, was flying in perfect geometric patterns. Thunder watched the footage again, his weathered hands gripping his coffee mug tighter with each replay. Nature didn't work in perfect circles and squares. He'd seen something similar once, in classified footage from a test site in Nevada. Right before things went sideways and 3 squadrons of experimental drones fell from the sky. The town of Pine Ridge had always been special, though few knew why. Nestled in the mountains where 3 states met, it had an unusually high concentration of retired military personnel, scientists, and engineers. The kind of people who chose it for its dark skies, quiet nights, and most importantly, its distance from major population centers. The kind of people who noticed when things weren't quite right. By noon, Thunder had gathered his old crew in the back room of May's Diner. Sarah Chen, Dr. Marcus from the observatory, and retired Air Force cryptologist Diana Wells. They were supposed to be meeting for their weekly chess tournament, but today's agenda was decidedly different. "It's not just the birds," Diana said, spreading printouts across the table. "Every electronic device in town is experiencing microsecond delays, like something's intercepting and rebroadcasting every signal." Dr. Marcus nodded, pushing his thick glasses up his nose. "The observatory's readings are off too. Stars that should be visible aren't, and there are new light sources that appeared overnight, but only visible through certain frequencies." Thunder listened, his tactical mind already mapping out scenarios and responses. "Sarah, your equipment picked up the pattern first. What are we dealing with?" Sarah pulled out her notebook. Analog, like everything else they were using now. "It's a language. Or more precisely, it's thousands of languages, all being broadcast simultaneously, including every human language ever recorded." She paused, letting that sink in. "And about 30,000 we've never heard before." The implications hung heavy in the air. Pine Ridge, population 2,873, was about to become ground zero for something unprecedented. And unlike the coastal cities with their defense systems and military bases, all they had was a group of retirees, a handful of sophisticated hobby equipment, and the collective knowledge of people who had spent their lives preparing for the impossible. Thunder smiled grimly. "They probably think they picked an easy target. Some backwater town in the middle of nowhere." He looked around the table at his unlikely team. I say we show them exactly why that was their biggest mistake. A low rumble shook the diner's windows, and all heads turned toward the sky. Through the glass, they watched as what appeared to be shooting stars began falling in broad daylight. Dozens, then hundreds of them, all moving with impossible precision. The invasion of Pine Ridge had begun. But the invaders were about to learn a harsh lesson about underestimating human ingenuity and about picking the wrong, quiet town to test humanity's defenses. Thunder stood up, his chair scraping against the linoleum floor. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we're about to give our visitors a proper Pine Ridge welcome. He turned to Sarah. How fast can you get your equipment running again? Sarah's eyes gleamed with the same determination she'd shown during countless space missions. Give me 2 hours and some duct tape. We're going to show these aliens what happens when they mess with a town full of overqualified retirees. The real question wasn't whether Pine Ridge would fight back. It was whether their visitors would realize their mistake before it was too late. Breaking through, the invaders made their first official appearance precisely at sunset, though not in the way anyone expected. Instead of landing on the town square or making grand proclamations, they simply walked out of the Pine Ridge Public Library as if they'd been there all along. 3 figures, dressed in what appeared to be perfectly pressed business suits, carrying identical briefcases. Dr. Marcus spotted them first through his repurposed astronomical spectroscope. They're broadcasting on frequencies that shouldn't exist, he whispered into his ancient walkie-talkie, one of the few communication devices still working after Sarah Chen had detected trace amounts of quantum interference in all modern electronics. Their suits aren't cloth. They're some kind of adaptive camouflage. From her vantage point in the water tower, Diana Wells watched through a pair of military-grade binoculars. Her years of cryptography experience weren't needed to decode their behavior. It was all wrong in subtle ways. They moved with perfect efficiency, no wasted motion, no natural swagger or stumble. Like machines trying to approximate human movement based on mathematical models. Thunder, they're heading towards City Hall, she reported, her voice steady despite the implications. And they're carrying something that's making my radiation detector click like a tap-dancing spider. In the basement of May's Diner, now converted into an impromptu command center, Thunder Thompson was orchestrating a response that would have made his old Marine Corps commanders proud. The town's residents had mobilized with remarkable speed, though not in any way the visitors might have expected. Mrs. Patterson's garden club has eyes on every street, he said, marking positions on a paper map. The model airplane enthusiasts have their drones ready. The old-school ones, nothing digital. And Sarah's rigged up something special with her ham radio equipment. Sarah looked up from her workbench, where she'd cannibalized 3 decades worth of electronics into something entirely new. It's not pretty, but it should work. If these visitors are using quantum communications, they've got one major weakness. They can't handle signal chaos. Too many random frequencies, too much noise. It's like trying to have a conversation in a room full of people shouting random numbers. The aliens reached City Hall just as Mayor Rodriguez was finishing her evening paperwork. Unlike most politicians, Rodriguez had a PhD in theoretical physics and had once designed missile guidance systems. She watched through her office window as the 3 figures approached, noting how the streetlights seemed to bend slightly around them, creating halos that shouldn't have been possible. "Good evening," the tallest figure said, its voice carrying harmonics that made nearby windows vibrate. "We represent the collective. Your settlement has been chosen for preliminary integration." Mayor Rodriguez smiled, the same smile she'd used during congressional budget hearings. "Welcome to Pine Ridge. I assume you've already scanned our town and determined we're an ideal first contact location. Small, isolated, seemingly unsophisticated." The aliens paused, their movements synchronizing in a way that made the mayor's teeth ache. "Your assessment is accurate. This location presents minimal risk and maximum control potential." "I see." Rodriguez pressed a button under her desk, not an alarm, but a signal to Thunder's team. And did your scans tell you why so many of our residents chose to retire here? Why a town this small has a world-class amateur radio operator, a former NASA mission controller, military intelligence officers, and one of the best-equipped private observatories in the country? Another pause, longer this time. The briefcases the aliens carried began to hum at a frequency that made Rodriguez's old combat instincts scream danger. Your technological level has been assessed. Your resistance capacity is minimal. Rodriguez's smile widened. Really? Then you might want to check those readings again. Right about now. Sarah Chen threw the switch on her jerry-rigged quantum disruptor. Across town, hundreds of ham radio operators, coordinated by Thunder, began broadcasting on precisely calculated frequencies. The Model Airplane Club launched their drones, each carrying small packages designed by Dr. Marcus that released patterns of reflective particles into the air. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The aliens' perfect suits flickered, revealing glimpses of something that hurt the eyes to look at. Their briefcases sparked and went dark. And most importantly, the strange pressure that had been building in the air since their arrival, the quantum field they'd been using to suppress the town's electronics, wavered. Pine Ridge has a proud tradition of emergency preparedness, Rodriguez said calmly, standing up from her desk. We're also a town full of people who spent their careers planning for the impossible. People who understand that sometimes the best technology isn't the newest. It's the kind you can trust, the kind you can fix with duct tape and determination. The aliens' synchronized movements became jerky, uncertain. Their perfect English degraded into bursts of static and mathematical equations. For the first time, they showed something close to human emotion. Confusion. "This is impossible," the tall one said, its voice modulating between frequencies. "Your species is not capable of disrupting quantum coherence." Thunder's voice crackled over Rodriguez's ancient radio. "Mayor, Sarah's reading massive energy spikes from their position. Whatever they're planning, it's happening now." Rodriguez straightened her jacket, the same way she had before testifying to the Joint Chiefs years ago. "Let me be clear," she said to the increasingly unstable aliens. "You can leave now, peacefully, or you can find out exactly what happens when you underestimate a town full of overqualified humans with something to prove." The response came not in words, but in a sudden surge of energy that shattered every window in City Hall. The real battle for Pine Ridge was about to begin, and humanity's first line of defense was a group of retirees with too much time, too much knowledge, and absolutely nothing to lose. The art of improvisation. The energy surge that destroyed City Hall's windows was just the beginning. As alarms blared across Pine Ridge, the alien visitors shed their human disguises completely, their forms shifting into configurations that seemed to twist through dimensions that shouldn't exist. But the town was ready. Sarah Chen's basement had become the nerve center of Pine Ridge's defense. Her walls of radio equipment, supplemented by every spare electronic component in town, formed a crude but effective quantum interference grid. "They're trying to establish a coherent field," she announced, watching patterns form on her oscilloscope. "If they succeed, every electronic device in town will be permanently fried." Dr. Marcus burst through the door, his arms full of hastily modified equipment. "We've got bigger problems. Those weren't briefcases they were carrying. They're dimensional anchors. They're trying to create a stable portal right in the middle of town." Thunder Thompson, coordinating defense teams via a network of runners and analog radios, processed this information with military precision. "A beachhead. They're not just testing us. They're preparing for a full invasion." Diana Wells looked up from her workstation, where she'd been analyzing the aliens' communication patterns. "There's a pattern in their quantum signatures. It's like they're singing. A perfect mathematical harmony that's strengthening their connection to whatever's on the other side of that portal." "Then we'll give them discord," Thunder declared. He turned to the assembled team of townspeople who had gathered in Sarah's basement. "Mrs. Patterson, get your garden club ready. Dr. Marcus, we're going to need every mirror and prism you can find. And somebody find me that kid who won the state science fair with his Tesla coil project. The plan that emerged was pure human improvisation. While the aliens focused on establishing their quantum harmonics, Pine Ridge prepared a symphony of chaos. The Garden Club positioned themselves around town, armed with modified fertilizer spreaders filled with a mixture Dr. Marcus had concocted, crystalline structures that would refract and scatter the aliens' coherent energy fields. High school physics teacher Tom Rivera, who'd spent 20 years building increasingly elaborate Tesla coils for science fairs, set up his equipment on the roof of the high school. "You want me to create as much electromagnetic interference as possible?" he asked, grinning like a teenager. "I've been preparing for this my whole career." The Model Airplane Club, led by retired Air Force pilot Maria Gonzalez, launched their fleet of modified craft. Each plane carried strips of specially treated metal that Diana had calculated would disrupt the mathematical harmony of the aliens' portal technology. "Like throwing a handful of wrong notes into their perfect chord," she explained. Sarah's radio network became the town's nervous system, coordinating the response through technology so old and simple it was immune to the aliens' interference. Ham radio operators, retired telephone engineers, and anyone who remembered how to operate analog equipment found themselves on the front lines of humanity's defense. The aliens, perhaps sensing the town's preparation, accelerated their plans. The air above City Hall began to twist, reality itself seeming to fold and unfold like an impossible origami. Through the distortion, something vast and incomprehensible began to take shape. "Now," Thunder's voice crackled over the radio network, "hit them with everything." The response was beautifully human in its organized chaos. Tesla coils fired, creating a web of artificial lightning that filled the air with random electromagnetic pulses. The Garden Club's crystalline mixture caught the energy and scattered it in thousands of directions, creating a kaleidoscope of quantum interference. Model planes flew intricate patterns through the distortion, their metal strips singing with discordant frequencies. And through it all, Sarah Chen broadcast a signal she designed based on Diana's analysis, a counter-harmony that turned the aliens' mathematical perfection against itself. The sound it made, for those who could hear it, was like a jazz improvisation played against a classical symphony, beautiful in its deliberate wrongness. The aliens' portal wavered, its perfect geometry corrupted by human disorder. Their forms flickered between dimensions, no longer able to maintain coherence in the face of such calculated chaos. For a moment, the entire town seemed to hold its breath. Then one of the aliens spoke, its voice distorting through multiple frequencies. "This is impossible. You are using primitive technology, obsolete methods. You cannot comprehend the principles involved." Mayor Rodriguez, who had relocated to the command center in Sarah's basement, picked up a radio microphone. "That's humanity's secret," she said. "We don't need to comprehend something perfectly to know how to break it. And we're very, very good at improvising." The alien response was cut off by a massive surge of energy from their failing portal. As their careful calculations collapsed under the weight of human interference, the invaders faced a choice: retreat or risk being trapped in a dimensional anomaly of their own making. But Pine Ridge wasn't done yet. They had shown their ability to resist. Now it was time to demonstrate why picking a fight with humans, even armed with vastly superior technology, was a fundamental mistake. Thunder looked at his assembled team and smiled. "Phase 2, he said simply. "Let's show them what happens when you back clever humans into a corner." The real demonstration of human ingenuity was about to begin, and the aliens were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous technology isn't the most advanced. It's the kind that's been tested, refined, and improvised upon by generations of human determination. Turning the tide. The dimensional portal above City Hall collapsed with a sound that existed somewhere between thunder and silence. The aliens, their perfect forms now flickering like bad television reception, retreated to the town square. But rather than admitting defeat, they initiated what appeared to be an emergency protocol. "Energy signatures are off the charts, Sarah Chen reported, her jury-rigged equipment struggling to keep up with the readings. They're drawing power from somewhere else, another dimension, maybe. Through the quantum static, the aliens began to change. Their forms expanded, merging with the technology they'd brought with them. What had been three humanoid figures became a single entity that loomed over the town square, a twisted amalgamation of advanced technology and interdimensional matter. Well, Thunder Thompson said dryly, watching through his binoculars from the makeshift command center. That's new. The transformed entity spoke, its voice resonating through multiple dimensions. Your resistance is unprecedented. Protocol demands escalation. This settlement will be reduced to constituent atoms for analysis. Dr. Marcus, who had been frantically scribbling calculations, looked up from his notebook. They're creating a quantum singularity. If they succeed, they'll not only destroy the town, they'll tear a hole in space-time itself. Diana Wells, still monitoring the aliens' communications, suddenly straightened. Wait. There's something in their transmissions, a pattern I've seen before. They're not just communicating. They're computing. Their entire form is one massive quantum computer. That's when 16-year-old Zach Martinez, who had been quietly tinkering in the corner with his homemade computer, spoke up. So they're basically running a program. Like really complicated software. Thunder turned to the teenager, recognizing the tone of someone who had just figured something out. You have an idea, son. Zach nodded, his hands flying over his keyboard, an ancient mechanical model he'd rebuilt himself. Every program has bugs, even alien ones, and the best way to crash a program, he grinned, is to give it an input it doesn't expect. Sarah Chen caught on immediately. A buffer overflow. On a quantum scale. She turned to her radio equipment, eyes gleaming. If we could broadcast enough random data, force their quantum computer to process more information than it can handle, we'd need a lot of random data, Diana interjected. More than we could generate. Thunder smiled. What's more random than human beings? He picked up his radio. Attention all residents of Pine Ridge. We need every transmitting device you own. Radios, walkie-talkies, cell phones, even if they're not working. And we need you to do what humans do best. Make noise. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across town, people began broadcasting on every frequency they could access. Ham radio operators transmitted poetry. The high school band, led by their enthusiastic director, played every song they knew, simultaneously. The local theater group performed Shakespeare into jury-rigged microphones. Even the elementary school's coding club got involved, running random number generators on their old computers. The alien entity reacted immediately, its perfect form distorting as it tried to process the flood of chaotic human input. But the town wasn't done yet. Tom Rivera's Tesla coils, now synchronized with Sarah's quantum interference grid, added their own electric symphony to the cacophony. The garden club's crystalline mixture, still suspended in the air, fractured the entity's quantum coherence into countless competing states. Dr. Marcus, monitoring the effects through his modified equipment, shouted over the noise. It's working. Their quantum field is destabilizing. But we need more. That's when Mayor Rodriguez made a decision that would be talked about for years to come. She walked out onto the town square, alone, facing the writhing alien entity. In her hand was something that made Sarah Chen laugh out loud when she saw it through her monitors, an ancient dial-up modem. You want to understand humanity. Rodriguez called out, her voice somehow cutting through the dimensional static. Here's 50 years of human technological evolution, all at once. She plugged the modem into a power source, and the sound that had once annoyed millions of internet users joined the chorus of human chaos. That distinctive screech, a sound that represented both the triumph and awkwardness of human technological progress, proved to be the final straw. The alien entity's perfect quantum coherence shattered. Its form collapsed in on itself, unable to maintain stability in the face of humanity's orchestrated disorder. The dimensional rifts it had opened snapped shut, and for a moment, Reality itself seemed to hiccup. Then silence. The kind of silence that Sarah Chen had noticed missing that morning, now returned with a sense of finality. In the town square, where a multidimensional alien entity had loomed moments before, there was nothing but a faint shimmer in the air and a lingering scent of ozone. Thunder Thompson walked over to where Mayor Rodriguez stood, still holding her dial-up modem. "Ma'am," he said with perfect military courtesy, "that was either the craziest or the most brilliant thing I've ever seen." Rodriguez smiled. "Sometimes they're the same thing." She looked around at her town, battered but unbowed, its residents emerging from their impromptu battle stations with expressions ranging from shocked to triumphant. Besides, if they wanted to understand humanity, what better way than to show them everything at once? Our chaos, our creativity, our stubborn refusal to throw away old technology just because something newer comes along. As the sun began to set over Pine Ridge, the town's residents gathered in the square, sharing stories and checking on neighbors. Sarah Chen's monitoring equipment showed no trace of quantum disturbances. The aliens, it seemed, had retreated, taking with them a lesson about underestimating human ingenuity. But Thunder Thompson, watching the celebrations from the steps of City Hall, knew this wasn't the end. Somewhere out there, an advanced alien civilization had just learned that their perfect technology could be defeated by human chaos and determination. And sooner or later, they'd be back, either as chastened visitors or more cautious enemies. Either way, Pine Ridge would be ready. After all, they still had plenty of old technology lying around, and humans were very, very good at finding new ways to use old tools. Echoes of victory. 1 month after what Pine Ridge residents had taken to calling the incident, life in the small mountain town had returned to something resembling normal. The quantum interference had faded, modern electronics worked again, and the local coffee shop had added Alien Invader blend to their menu. Extra strong, guaranteed to keep you alert during interdimensional invasions. But things weren't quite the same. Sarah Chen's basement laboratory had become an unofficial museum of the event, her jerry-rigged equipment now carefully preserved and studied by a steady stream of government scientists who tried and failed to understand exactly how a retired NASA controller had managed to disrupt quantum-level technology with modified ham radio equipment. "It's simple," she'd tell them, enjoying their bewildered expressions. "Humans have been making things work with duct tape and spare parts since we invented the wheel. Sometimes the best solutions aren't the most elegant ones." The Garden Club, led by Mrs. Patterson, had turned their victory garden into an experimental ground for growing the crystals that had helped scatter the aliens' energy fields. They claimed the plants grew better around them, though Dr. Marcus suspected this had more to do with the gardener's enthusiasm than any quantum effects. Thunder Thompson had refused 3 separate offers from military contractors wanting to modernize Pine Ridge's defense systems. With all due respect, he'd told the latest representative, "We did just fine with what we had. Sometimes the old ways work best." The high school science department, led by Tom Rivera and his Tesla coils, had received an unprecedented number of student applications. The waiting list for the electronics club stretched into next semester, and the principal had been forced to allocate extra funding for what was now called practical interdimensional defense studies. Mayor Rodriguez found herself dealing with an unusual type of tourism. People came from across the country to see the town that had repelled an alien invasion with outdated technology and human ingenuity. She handled the attention with characteristic grace, deflecting questions about classified details while emphasizing the importance of community preparedness. But it was Diana Wells who made the most significant discovery. 3 weeks after the incident, while analyzing recordings of the alien communications, she found something hidden in the quantum static. A message, or perhaps a warning, encoded in mathematical patterns that seemed to fold in on themselves. "They're coming back," she announced during one of the now regular strategy meetings in May's diner. "Not soon, but eventually. And next time, they'll be ready for our tricks." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Then Zach Martinez, who had been officially appointed the town's chief of unconventional computing solutions, a title he'd designed himself, spoke up. "Good," he said, fingers dancing across his mechanical keyboard. "That means we get to invent new ones." Dr. Marcus nodded, pushing his glasses up with a gleam in his eye. "They still don't understand their fundamental mistake. They think technology alone determines the outcome of a conflict. They're learning," Sarah added, "but so are we. And we got something they don't. The ability to make something out of nothing, to find solutions in the most unlikely places." Thunder smiled, the same smile that had preceded their victory a month ago. "Besides," he said, "humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology, old or new. It's our ability to adapt, to take what we know and transform it into something unexpected." Mayor Rodriguez stood, surveying the faces around her. Scientists, soldiers, teachers, students, all united by their shared experience and determination. "Then we'll be ready," she declared. "Not just Pine Ridge, but all of humanity. Because now we know something crucial about ourselves." "What's that?" Mrs. Patterson asked, looking up from her crystal-growing notes. "That when pushed to our limits, when faced with impossible odds, humans don't just survive. We improvise, adapt, and overcome. We turn our limitations into advantages, our outdated technology into unexpected solutions." As if in response, a faint pattern of lights danced across the evening sky. Aurora-like formations that Dr. Marcus's instruments suggested were echoes of dimensional disturbances. A reminder that somewhere out there, an advanced civilization was reconsidering its assessment of a species that had turned dial-up modems and Tesla coils into weapons against quantum technology. Pine Ridge settled in for a quiet evening, its residents going about their lives with the quiet confidence of people who had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. In Sarah Chen's basement, her equipment hummed softly, monitoring frequencies that humans weren't supposed to be able to detect. On the high school roof, Tom Rivera's Tesla coils stood ready, occasionally sparking against the twilight sky. And in homes across town, people kept their old radios, their outdated computers, their seemingly obsolete technology, just in case, because they had learned something that their alien visitors had failed to grasp. In the end, it wasn't about having the most advanced technology or the perfect plan. It was about the uniquely human ability to take whatever tools were at hand and forge them into something extraordinary. The invasion of Pine Ridge had failed not because humanity was stronger or more technologically advanced, but because we possessed something far more powerful, the creative spark that had taken us from stone tools to space exploration, the determination that turned setbacks into opportunities, and the wisdom to know that sometimes the best way forward was to look backward. And if the aliens did return, well, Pine Ridge would be ready. After all, they still had plenty of dial-up modems in storage, and humanity's capacity for improvisation was limitless.